Welcome everyone to Reel's 2E Self-Regulation Lunchtime Chat with Teresa Nair. We do have a Spanish translation going in another channel, so you can access that at the bottom of your Zoom screen. And Callie will write that in Spanish in the chat. So in case you're not familiar with Reel, we are a local nonprofit in Silicon Valley trying to help twice exceptional students thrive in school by raising parent awareness through events such as this and educator awareness as well, to address the needs of 2E learners successfully. So what is 2E? This is a definition that we often use from Bridges, which is students that have both distinguishing strengths, high abilities, or potential in one or more areas, and complex challenges such as autism, ADHD, dyslexia, anxiety, and others at the same time. And it's critical to address both the strengths and the challenges simultaneously, not only the yellow or the blue, but the green. And so it makes these students complex to address their needs in the classroom. And that's why Reel exists. Reel provides parent services. Almost all of them are free, such as the expert speaker series like you're attending today, a bi-monthly online parent support group, a Google group with hundreds of parents that ask and answer each other's questions and share resources, a lot of online resources such as our IEP guide, a schools list and school guidance, and parent toolkits that I'll show you in one moment. We also have small paid facilitated groups run by Teresa. And we do one-on-one consultations on a variety of topics as well if you need to dive more in depth. The parent toolkits are something new, relatively new on our site. You can download a kit on any subject. These are all free. Do you need to know how to speak to your school more? Do you need to know how to lean into your child's strengths? We have toolkits on about 10 different topics. We also have an IEP guide, which is 46 pages with every information you could want to know about getting an IEP for twice exceptional learners. This is the California Bay Area edition, but we say 90 to 95% of the material covered in this guide is applicable everywhere. Reel also provides custom professional development resources and talks and an educator newsletter. You can bring Reel to your school to do a learning difference simulation or to discuss our educator Dear Reel model, how developing connection, embracing flexibility, attending to strengths, and reframing behaviors can help 2E and neurodivergent learners. Just so you know, most of these events have passed and are now recordings on our YouTube channel, but you can still sign up for our Behind the Mask Understanding Anxiety, Perfection, and Masking in 2E Kids on November 12th and our November 6th Parent Support Group on our site. You can join Reel on our Google group. You can follow us on a variety of socials and watch all our past events on our YouTube channel. And without further ado, I will stop sharing and introduce Teresa. Callie, if you want to, I don't know if you want to pin Teresa. Teresa is the mother of two vibrant 2E kids, and she is 2E herself. She holds an MED in cognitive diversity from Bridges Graduate School. Teresa has a diverse professional background, including roles as a classroom teacher, a board member for organizations that support the disabled communities in Silicon Valley, and a consultant. Teresa is Reel's parent community program manager, and we're so excited to have her share this information with you today.
Thanks, Yael. It's a pleasure to be here. I'm excited to have this opportunity also. So I'm going to put my slides up real quick. Give me a thumbs up if you can see my slide deck. Perfect. Welcome. I'm excited to be here today to talk about self-regulation through the twice exceptional lens. What I think is important to know just from the get-go, it's a complex idea with a lot of different layers, and then you add our twice exceptional kids on top of it, and even more so. So let's take this time to share some thoughts together, introduce some concepts, and hopefully get a little bit more of an understanding of self-regulation through the twice exceptional lens. So once again, my name is Teresa Nair. I am the Reel Parent Community Services and Program Manager, and mother, teacher, neurodivergent myself, and I joke that I'm a 2E wannabe because, back in the 80s and 90s, we didn't have that really cool term, but I'd take it. And so, as I think my kids' journey has led me to believe twice exceptionality, that's something I'd like to be. So I joke that I'm a 2E wannabe. So, what is today about? Well, first, let's welcome everybody. Thank you for taking this time in your afternoon to be with us. It's really exciting to see how much interest we have. So, what I'm going to do is just go over why this topic matters. We'll go into a little bit about what is self-regulation, touch on what I call the three-step pathway, and then the importance of co-regulation. So that one is going to be a big one. Real life scenarios, and then a short Q&A. So if you do have questions or something comes up during the chat, feel free, or during the talk, feel free to put it in the chat. I've got both Kelly and Yael from my team keeping their eyes on that. They'll be putting links in there too. So keep the chat busy. Tell me who you guys are, what you're interested in knowing, hearing, or understanding a little bit more about. So, as we go further, keep in mind this is about compassion, curiosity, and community. One of the biggest things that I love about Real is our community. So, thank you for being a part of that today, and hopefully, thank you for continuing to be a part of that as we go forward on this exciting journey. So why does self-regulation matter in a twice exceptional lens? First and foremost, it's a topic that many of you want to know more about. When we do our community surveys and we ask, what topics are you interested in? What do you want to know more about? Literally 75% of the people who take the survey want to know more about self-regulation. They want some more insight and understanding. That's really big number for our community, but it's happened year after year. So that's why we always try and make space and room for these conversations about self-regulation, the concepts and ideas behind it. So recently we did a 4-part facilitated small group discussion. That's where a lot of this material will come from. I have a group of 8 parents and caregivers, and we spend 4 weeks together walking through ideas such as self-regulation. Other topics are executive functioning. We have another motivation group coming up. So some of these ideas that you're going to see in here are topics and experiences that parents and I have shared through these discussions and also many years of working with kiddos. So why self-regulation and twice exceptionality? Well, many twice exceptional kids and parents feel deeply, right? This is just something that we see. And that can lead to whether it is deeply felt emotions around excitement or frustration or injustice or curiosity. Here they are diving in and really putting a lot of energy towards this experience of frustration, experience of injustice, experience of curiosity. Our kids come at it with an intensity. That intensity is part of their gift. So without these regulation tools, it can lead to like misdirection of where they're putting that energy instead of in their dance routine, instead of in their chemical equations or, programming languages. They're misdirected and they're putting way too much energy into their frustration or way too much energy towards this injustice instead of solving the injustice. So we're going to learn some tools so that we don't run into exhaustion, shutdown, and misunderstandings because this intensity is magnificent. So let's make sure that we can help with the right regulation tools to show up as the child that they want to be, that we know that they can be. So another good thing I want you guys to keep in mind is you're already doing self-regulation, right? So this is just a way of how can we be more intentional about applying it to our kids? Because like Dr. Ross Green says, kids do well if they can. So what can we do to support that so that they can do well? Now, Yael did a wonderful job of introducing twice exceptionality. I'm not going to go into it a whole lot more, but it does play a vital role into the discussion. When you have this asynchronous profile, when you have these high highs, this vocabulary, reading fluency, or even math reasoning that is, up in the 99th percentile. They're experiencing this wonderful and exciting world at a very, very dynamic high level. They're also having these jagged profiles of lagging skills and disability, just flat out disability. So taking that into consideration is a big part of as we look to support the twice exceptional student and or child at home. So knowing that this is a jagged asynchronous profile that is just the way the child has developed, is developing. Okay. I will continue to go back to the idea that the um, the brain is developing, and with that, so are the skills. So I use this analogy quite a bit. It's the idea that there is always a lion in the room with our children. So if we take the idea of a dyslexic, twice exceptional student, they may be delightfully involved in the discussion about characters and loving the idea of talking about who's doing what and why. And so the classroom is very exciting for them because they're having this great discussion. Their vocabulary is off the charts as they dive into these concepts verbally and just really enjoying it. But in the back of their mind, there is a lion there. There is this anxiety, this tension of knowing that it's possible very soon that what they can't do well is going to jump out in the middle of their enjoyable time, right? They're having this great time, but maybe they're going to have to write about it. Maybe they're going to have to be in a small group and read paragraphs out loud to each other. Or maybe they're going to have to share their writing. So there are so many other things that can be interplaying at the exact same time of feeling this wonderful joy of this gifted brain, but then knowing that at any moment they could be called on which could bring shame and embarrassment and anxiety. So with that becomes a challenge for regulating. How do we regulate those high highs? What is self-regulation? In our group, we came at it from a lot of different ways. If you Google self-regulation, you're going to get hundreds, if not thousands, of what is it. So what I did is I took some of the ones that I felt really helped us move towards a healthy framework for our twice exceptional students. So we can start with something like self-regulation is the ability to understand behavior and your reactions and your feelings and things like that. That's, a probably familiar one from raising children in Australia. Then we have our go-tos like Dr. Stuart Shankert and his self-reg framework. He describes self-regulation in a lot of different ways. He's got books on it. He's got workshops on it. He uses 5 domains. And what's nice about Dr. Stuart Shankert is I love the fact that he oftentimes will say the ability to self-regulate only begins in a child around the age of 7. Before that, they don't even have the cognitive ability necessary to start the process of learning how to self-regulate. So at the age of 7 is when you can start to expect maybe some self-regulation starting to come online cognitively. Let's pause there. Once again, come back and experience this through our twice exceptional kids. So Davidson Young recently put out some information on research that shows gifted children stay in the quote unquote sponge phase of their, synaptical exuberance in their brains, sometimes 2 to 3 years longer than their neurotypical peers. So a gifted brain doesn't even begin to prune the pathways to the prefrontal cortex. It's all connected, sometimes for 3 to 4 years. ADHD brains are also lagging 3 to 4 years, possibly behind their neurotypical peers when it comes to a lot of this work. So Dr. Stuart Shanker starts with it. There are other organizations such as Autism Level Up, who also talk about self-regulation, but they don't use that word. For them, they use it in the framework of energy regulation. So I kind of take all of this into consideration because we have information that comes to us, but does it really apply to us? And how can we make it apply? Because there will be this constant interplay between our children's struggles and their strengths at the same time. And so, what is that doing to the regulation, the dysregulation? How does our child show up as their best self? As Dr. Stuart Shankert says, he wants children to thrive, not just survive. So, what does that mean for our twice exceptional kiddos? So, as I mentioned, we kind of put this into a way to streamline the complexity of it all. So, these are simple 3 steps, but they're actually a little bit more complex. But hang in there with me, because what I want to do is I want to say, let's look at what happens when the world is both too easy and too challenging at the same time. How do we begin to even approach that? So step one is going to be to identify indicators. Now, I recommend that parents, even in my discussion group, we talk a lot about this, is starting with yourself. Use yourself maybe as the first experience of walking through this 3-step pathway, because indicators can be somewhat hidden. But if we're listening to ourselves, if we're paying attention, indicators start to show up. Well, what's an indicator? Indicators are when you start to notice that this behavior is trying to tell me something. There's a misalignment between what's going on, and what the child is experiencing. It can be a misalignment in a lot of different ways, but acknowledging that behaviors are communication. So what is being indicated during this particular time? We see things starting to wobble the wrong way, let's say. So common 2E indicators are often that things become behavioral, emotional, or physical. So examples of that can be behavioral outbursts or irritability, and physical could be headaches, stomach aches, things that are indicating to us that we need to look a little bit deeper into starting to regulate. So the next thing is a good example of an after-school meltdown. Before the meltdown happens, most likely there are some indicators that are stepping up into this purview. It might be that the child is irritable and snapping in the back, and all of a sudden it just starts to go downhill quickly from there. What we're going to want to do is look at this as data, not defiance. This is information. This is actually good information that's going to help us as we take these steps, to realize it's not about defiance. We're actually gathering information here so that we can start to help our child show up as the person that they want to be. Where their energy is going is where they want to direct it. So data, not defiance. That brings us to the second step. So first, we're looking for indicators, whether it's indicators in ourself. Gosh, my heart is pounding. What's going on here? That's the second step. Curiosity. What's going on here? And we want to shift it from the right or wrong, good or bad, into curiosity. What's happening? There's also another phrase that's used, why now? Like, what's happening? Why now? Curiosity, not, that behavior is wrong, or I don't want you to do that. That's not good. Those kind of things. It's more like, we've got some data here. Why? What is going on that's showing us indicators of stress? They're showing us indicators of dysregulation. So that curiosity is going to be our second step. It's going to take us a little bit further into the experience. This is where reflective questions come into play. So Asking questions like what's happening or why now is just the start. But are these questions going to help us identify some of the triggers? We might need to do a little bit more detective work. So, when did this start? Um, Dr. Shanker has the 5 domains that I mentioned, but there's a worksheet and it's in, we created like a 20 some page self-regulation document. And within there, there's a link to the domains. And I encourage that throughout this process, you involve your kids because when they're not dysregulated, when they're in a state where they can have these conversations, you're going to be able to get a lot from them. Was it something that emotionally occurred? That cognitively? Is it that once again, this is way too easy while it's being way too challenging? Um, is there something physical? Are there fine motor issues going on when your child already struggles with that? Keeping in mind, often as we ask these questions and we're getting curious, not only knowing ourselves, if we're doing this reflection step, 3 steps for ourselves, but also as we get to lean into supporting our children, curiosity and asking questions. So examples of some of what might be the why now or what's happening can be what we call like hidden drivers. There could be hunger going on. This is actually not my child extremely upset about traffic. I don't know. Actually, they're hungry. Could we look at this and try? There's the halt tool. Can you ask, is it hunger? Is it anger? Are they lonely, thirsty, tired? So, going through some of these questions, digging a little bit deeper, figuring out what's going on and why now. So, that's the second step. You've got indicators. Now you're curious as to why now? Why are these showing up now? Another thing that I like to talk about is that there are some common 2E triggers, and I'd be curious if you guys have some of your own. So go ahead and put in the chat. Like, do you know that there are some common triggers in your child, in your home, for yourself, even too? So one of my kiddos is extremely sensitive to wind. Like who knows? But for some reason, wind makes them very angry. So it's one of those things that I'll be like, ooh, I see that this conversation is getting really tense. What's going on? Then I might notice we were sitting outside and they're like cringing because the wind is blowing at them too hard. Showers. Showers can be another really big moment of something's going on here. Like, I don't know that this is necessarily about the shower. Is this about the shower? Is it about the sounds, the water temperatures? Showers has a lot, there's a lot going on with showers. So, what's happening? What are the indicators? Um, my child knows that shower time is coming up. All of a sudden, they're starting to get irritable. It's starting to escalate. Why? Is it the shower? What's going on there? Sounds can be another one. What's happening? Well, there's a lot of background noise, or they're sitting next to grandpa who eats with his mouth open. Like that could also be something that just sends self-regulation out the window. Um, and frustration. When tasks are too easy and too difficult at the same time. I think we've seen our kids experience this, and how do we help them through that? How do we help them show up in the best ways that we can? Boredom can also be another one. Why now? Well, it's maybe because they're bored, and we might need to look a little bit more into that. So, ask questions, go through some of the hidden drivers that you know your child has, or start to be that detective looking at what could be hidden here that I don't know, that has thrown my child's self-regulation abilities out the window. Hungry, angry, lonely, tired, those kind of things. And then we'll go into the third step. So we've identified that there are indicators of stress, there are indicators of a misalignment of expectations or experiences. for that situation or where the energy is being placed. Two, we got curious and we started to ask what's happening. And we come up with a couple different things like, okay, we know it's X, Y, and Z. That's what's happening right now. Then we have our third step. Let's mitigate with the three R's. The pathway will take us to the idea of first R, reduce. Can we remove any unnecessary stressors? Is that a possibility to reduce um, some of these triggers or some of the things that are causing the regulation and the energy to go in a direction that's not as productive as our child wants it to be? They might want to be building Legos, but all of a sudden they've gotten extremely frustrated. Self-regulation has gone out the window. Is there anything that we can remove so that they can get back to creating their amazing creations? So one of them is remove tags, noises, expectations. These things, once again, like I said, can get somewhat complicated, but they play a role. And so if we simplify it by identifying, getting curious, and then working through mitigating it through reducing and removing, restructuring. Can we adapt the environment? Can we change different timing? Can we use different tools? This is something I had a conversation with some parents in our group. We were talking about, I think it was showers once again. And one parent had a lot of dysregulation for their child around not wanting to get out of the shower. Another one had getting into the shower. So even the same situation can mean different things, but finding out, well, timing actually worked for one of our parents because they made the shower earlier in the evening so that the transition was easier because they looked forward to bedtime or they looked forward to being able to read after the shower. So for them, it was changing this timing, kind of getting curious as to how can we restructure this misalignment so that the energy gets put in a healthy way towards what our child's hoping to accomplish, enjoying a shower, but then earlier in the night so that they can then go into something that they also enjoy, reading their book before bed, as opposed to not even wanting to do the shower, making it the last thing of the night, and then it's heels dug in. So timing tools, we can get into those kind of ideas too. And restore. Anybody that's ever been in my groups know that I'm a huge, huge proponent of restore. I think that movement, humor, quiet, all of these things are necessary for our well-being, and restore can sometimes be overlooked as a solution to self-regulation. So think of it this way. One of the examples I love to use is you've probably been in a meeting. There are three of you in a meeting. It's extremely stressful, arguing about a particular gap or something that's happening. It's not going well, and everyone is just really heightened. Very rarely will work be done until somebody does a restore. Somebody might be able to crack a joke, and all of a sudden the room is reset. There's some laughter. Things have been restored a little bit. It might be that you need to step outside and just catch your breath for a minute for a little bit of quiet. Then you can come back in and help the entire room reset. So keeping that in mind, that restore is a very powerful one. And I want to ask, like, you know, when your child feels off balance, which steps do you tend to rush through? So we've talked about identifying these indicators. So that way we can kind of get to it early and help mitigate from there. Is it step number two, get curious? Do you just blow through that and go straight to mitigate? Let's fix it. I'm not sure why this is happening, but we're just going to make it better right now. Or is it the mitigation part? You're just flying through, seeing that, there are indicators getting curious about what's happening, but not sure really how to mitigate. So I bet all of us have a different one that we might be rushing through or we might completely forget. But when we work together with all three of them, they can be pretty powerful. So simplifying it into identifying, getting curious, and mitigating can be a powerful way. What's important to keep in mind, and so much of this is co-regulation. So I like the idea of normalizing regulation as relational. This is really important, I think, especially in this day and age where our children are feeling more and more isolated. Um, I hope, and I think everybody probably hopefully does um, co-regulation even to this day. I hope that we can normalize not outgrowing co-regulation. So when you call your best friend after a long day, that's co-regulation. That is seeking to harmonize with somebody who might help you feel safe. Um, it's better than that one friend that's going to get you all riled up, right? Maybe that's what you need, maybe not. But finding that co-regulation, that relationship that is going to help you find a safe space. So I would love for us as parents to not be afraid to use this until our kids are forever. Taking the opportunity to um, see that you bring value, other people bring value to the regulation process is wonderful. So what you get, when we show up as co-regulators, whether it's teachers or parents, it signals safety to a child's brain. They don't even necessarily know it, but by co-regulating and coming in calm and in a space of stability and regulation, we have signaled to their amygdala, like the way deep inside part of their brain, that first part of their brain, that there is safety. And so by that signaling of safety, by them um, almost, feeling it deeply, they're able to then start to practice brain development. What they're able to do once they feel that safety from us or co-regulation, what we're able to do once our friend, has helped us with these deep breaths and listened to us, and all of a sudden we're here and okay, we can talk about it a little bit more. We start to walk through the more complex dimensions of cognitive abilities. So we're working our way up to the prefrontal cortex. Keep in mind, however, though, oftentimes our children's prefrontal cortex, because of twice exceptionality, isn't even ready to begin these complex processes of executive functioning because it's in this sponge phase. It is not doing the synaptic pruning. It is still sponging. So we're going to need to scaffold. We're going to need to co-regulate a bit longer for twice exceptional kids. And that's just because their brain is working different ways. It is soaking in the world, soaking in the experiences, thinking about all these other things, as opposed to being ready to prune the synapses and focus on executive functioning, moving forward. So even just the idea of co-regulation is vital, more so for our twice exceptional community, because their brains are restructuring or working themselves through differently. So how can we help with that? How can we help them practice? By showing up. Oftentimes when I talk about co-regulation, parents and teachers, but especially parents, are challenged to find the calm within themselves. And I think that that's important for us to acknowledge that you guys are human. We're all human. There are going to be times where we're going to have to um, step back and do the 3 steps. We're going to need to identify that we've been triggered or that there's something going on. We're going to need to get curious as to why, and then we're going to need to mitigate. all before we can show up for our kids and help them through the process. And that's normal. That's okay. We've all been raised in a society that runs through, if not completely jumps over, many of those steps. They might hit one step, and that step might just be mitigate, 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 mitigate. Throw this out, try this, do that, and we need to stop and slow down and help ourselves be in a space where all three steps are valuable so that when we show up for our children, we can help them find value in all three steps. Because it's a whole way of showing up. So I truly believe that self-regulation grows out of co-regulation and taking the time for ourselves to find out what does self-regulation mean to me, and when am I most challenged? When do my indicators show up? What does that mean, and how do I mitigate? Is a process that will help not only you, but your child, because we are the adults. That's the straw that we got in this life is that we showed up as adults in this one for our children. So we get to put the work into to help them put the work in. So model adults, parents, teachers, um, those that are caregivers and family members, model yourself walking through those three steps because your children will see you as a person who is trying, and they'll learn that trying is part of life, and they will listen to you even if you do it out loud. Wow. I'm feeling a little, my heart's starting to race. I'm feeling a little sweaty. What's going on here? What's happening? My gosh, I haven't eaten anything. I should probably eat something before I get really cranky. Boom. Right there, you have modeled one, two, three, and hopefully gotten an opportunity to show your child it's just part of life. We just have to walk through these steps. We'll get there. And of course, we all have the bigger ones. We have the bigger ones where it's going to be more challenging for us. Why is this so challenging, though? Is going to be a big part of it. And I think parents can spend some time, teachers can spend some time on um, figuring that out. Mm. One of the things I do is I encourage these micro recoveries. So teaching your kid that throughout the day, just taking time to pause, taking time to find humor, changing the state of your body or a sensory reset is a great way for co-regulation to happen together and to acknowledge that you're taking steps to help move forward through the regulation process and to self-regulate. So, when your child feels off balance, which of these steps do you rush through? But I also want you to put it onto yourself. When you feel out of balance, which of these steps do you rush through? Which ones are you getting hung up on? And seek some co-regulation support to help you get through it too. So, let's do some scenarios. This one, like I said, I think it's important. So I'm putting parents first here. We got to put our oxygen mask on first, right? So I drive home from work after a long day. I pick up my child from school and I'm finding myself just griping at other drivers and short with my kids. By the time I get home, I have a headache. So if we were to walk through why has my self-regulation just completely gone out the window? Why is this so challenging right now? Why is my energy not going towards thriving? Um, we could start with step one. What is the indicator? In this particular scenario, there are physical indicators, probably some shallow breathing. I noticed that, there's a headache coming on. I think I'm feeling a little stressed here. I noticed that I'm snapping at the kids. There are indicators right now that I'm off. The balance is not here. Get curious. Why? Why now? What's happening? And that's going to be one of the things where we start to think, was it work? No, I was pretty good when I got into the car. I am hungry though, and I'm listening to the news. So that just got me in a bad mood. So once again, getting curious as to what's going on will help us get through the next step. So asking questions, what's happening? When did I first start to see these indicators? Well, it was after I got in the car. I had one mom say to me, um, all of this happened. Then I realized, oh, I was starting my period. We're human. These things will happen. But by acknowledging that we're stepping through this, she was then able to have a different conversation, acknowledge what was happening, and then decide to mitigate it how she chose to. You can reduce it, you can restore it, and you can restructure it. So for her, she knew that she needed not to listen to the news because that was just going to make things worse. I need that all the time, especially when I've got kids in the back of the car after a long day. Not listen to the news. What can we listen to? Those kind of things. So we're not necessarily going, and our kids will not be able to avoid this. Like life is lifing. It will continue to. How do we walk them through a healthy response so that they show up as their magnificent selves with all of their passion directed at how they're going to, I don't know, change the world? So, once again, let's take on the next one. That last slide, that little box that popped up, it said before, during, or after. I wanted to remind everybody that this is something that you can start in the middle of it. You just realized you were mitigating right, left, and center, and nothing's working. And you're like, wait, maybe I need to start at the beginning. Step one, when did I first see indicators? Step two, why did they start then? Step three, mitigation. Okay. So maybe you were already at three, go back to one. Or maybe you've got a kid who is 18 and you guys are just starting this process together. You can start anywhere in it and try and find your way through it a little bit more hopefully and with intention. So the morning routine, surprise, surprise. Scenario two. So my kid gets ready for the day, but is now on the floor yelling and growling about how stupid their shoes are. Okay, and they have no idea where their backpack is. This is a morning routine. Well, let's identify the indicators here. I can see my kid is out of balance. They're stressed. They're responding with a whole lot of energy towards growling at their shoes. Like, this is not where we want the energy to go right now. What's going on? So like I said, external yelling, exaggeration, irritability, a lot of indicators going on. What's going on? So what's happening? When did I first see these? Well, they woke up in a good mood and we got through breakfast. Everything was fine. Things fell apart when the shoes came out. Okay, something around there. So could it be that small motor function is a challenge? Do we need to reduce and restructure? So shoes without ties, that kind of thing. Slip-on shoes, maybe that's what we need. Should we, if the backpack is the issue, because that's the next step, should we put it always by the door before we go to bed? As we pretend to get ready for the day. So trying to mitigate, once we figure out what's happening here, where can we start to reduce, restructure, and restore the situation? So last one is a morning routine, but I want to think about it in the ideas that this can be more complex. Let's say you noticed the indicators started right away. This was as soon as the kid got up. It was a challenge. You might be dealing with something more than shoes. What's happening behind the scenes could be something more than just where you place your backpack or slip-on shoes. School refusal can be part of this role. Um, Social dynamics at school might be happening. So really, as things get more complex and as your child really starts to expand in those different five domains, asking questions, sitting with them, exploring when things are okay, and talking about what works, what didn't. I noticed the other day it was a little bit smoother. Yeah, because I didn't have PE. I hate PE. Blah, blah, blah. Like all of a sudden you're like, whoa, okay. Detective work got me to PE. What's going on in PE? So trying to understand that it might not be right in front of you, but with that curiosity, hopefully you can get a little bit further into, okay, now we know it's a bit deeper. How do we start to reduce, restructure, and restore? Maybe they need a change in their schedule so that they have a study hall before PE because they're already exhausted. They don't want to go into a loud gym and blah, blah, maybe they're already shot before PE even starts. So strategizing once we know a little bit more, you're going to have to do this over and over again, but hopefully the framework will get you through even the complex times. Let's bring it to classrooms. As a teacher, we know that the classrooms are busy places where self-regulation and the components are continually being practiced. We want to focus on how can we use these three steps so that the children show up as the best version of themselves. And I really should have put in bold themselves. I hope that teachers can take a deep breath and be okay with the idea that this is not meant for us to figure out how children can show up more neurotypical or how they can behave better, as much as we want them to use and have their energies directed at the things that make them shine, supporting their strengths, scaffolding their challenges. So in the classroom, we're going to start by, once again, identifying indicators. It might be that the indicator is the kids under the desk. All right, you got an indicator right there. Get curious. Why is the child under the desk? What's happening that this might be a response? Um, Another indicator might be that the child is not responding to your questions. So we're curious. We notice that there's a lot going on in the classroom. It's a group project. People are moving around quite a bit. So how do we get in here and start to ask questions? It might be that earlier we've had to scaffold and put in nonverbal cartoons on their desk so that they can point to that they need a bathroom break, or they can point to that they need a quiet moment, or they can point to something that we can help mitigate the situations, because it can be more and it will be more. So having trouble getting started, those kind of things. So as we find out what's going on, we can then begin to appropriately reduce and restructure and restore. So that's a lot. And like I said, this is a very complex topic, and hopefully we can talk more about it. Nobody's an expert overnight, but just know that you're already doing it on your own. And these are just opportunities to be more intentional about what it is that you're doing and why you're doing it. So include the children whenever possible. When you're not in the heat of things, when you're not trying to work through all the steps, get curious with them. Notice when things went smoothly. Talk about why that was, or notice after the fact that there was a challenge yesterday in the car. Today went much smoother. I wonder what's going on. What might be the change? Get your children involved. Model grace and recovery, because all of us are getting through it. Some days are better than others. And so when we show our children that we are trying our best, we're working through this together, it will help them know that it's not through perfection, it's through practice. And make sure to continue to seek out neurodivergent positive communities like real2e.org for support, resources, and community. One of the best things that I love about our community is we've got a Google group where you can literally ask questions. My kid is completely having challenges around X, Y, and Z. I know that this is happening, identified this, got curious about that, but I don't know how to solve this. We literally had questions today in our Google group where parents came in with all kinds of ideas. Try this. What about this? So keep in mind that once again, it's not through perfection. None of us are going to be perfect at this, but we're going to practice, hopefully, and support each other. So find communities where you feel that you can continue to do that. And hopefully you'll continue to join us here at Real. So I am ready for a couple of questions if we have some. Once again, you're not alone on this journey. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you so much, Teresa. I really got me thinking. So we have some questions. Earlier, when you had asked people what kind of indicators do they notice, one person mentioned, and several people said they agree, that criticism is really hard for their child. I don't know if you had any suggestions, even if it's done kindly and, um, you know, constructively and everything. Yeah.
Well, and knowing that criticism is what is going to start to dysregulate the child, um, is I would continue on to step three. Is it necessary? Like, do we need to have that in there, or does the child already know and they're working towards it and they're trying to get there? Are we just hammering on something that they already know, which is making them upset? So can we restructure it so that they have space to explore? I would also, in the past, give kids packets that had, let's say, the answers in it. And so if they got it wrong, they could check it on their own. They could figure out why. And so I wasn't a part of any criticism about XYZ being wrong or not quite right, or you should try again. They had the opportunity to self-correct because they had it there with them. And so then they were able to show up a little bit more confident when it was a class experience. I I think that that is something that we're going to experience a lot, and we do experience a lot with our twice exceptional kiddos because they have brains that have such big knowledge and expectations because they should know this, they can do that. I mean, even in their own heads, any criticism can be really, really challenging to take. So is it necessary? Can we restructure in different ways? And if it is a part of the experience, I would go in as gently as possible, recognizing that you have to restore. You're going to have to need to come back at it with some humor, or if they aren't up for humor, some space and quiet. So those are some ideas around it.
Thank you. Okay, another question. When my kid is in full meltdown mode, the presence of a parent seems to make it worse, regardless of what we say or don't say, probably due to feelings of shame or pressure. How do you help co-regulate in this situation? The only thing that works is leaving the room and letting him calm down on his own.
Mhm. Well, if that's what works, then do that. One of the things that I would suggest though is just to find a quiet spot to sit, usually low. If you can find a quiet spot to sit low and just be there, that's part of kind of the co-regulation. They might need their own space. Some people are like that, but it might be that they just need a non-threatening presence to help them co-regulate. So it might be you sitting cross-legged on the floor against the wall, not saying anything. It's just your presence reassures them that you are there for whatever they're processing, and that you will continue to be there as they process. That's part of the co-regulation. I think that's so valuable is that our kids learn even when it's tough and even when big feelings and things like that are happening, somebody will still be there. So if you can, just find a quiet spot, maybe on the floor, and maybe not even make eye contact. Just sit there quietly and see if that helps too, so that we can start to restore that normalization of relational co-regulation.
And someone else is mentioning in the chat when her kid is in full meltdown, the kid needs space, and the OT said it's not effective to intervene when they're in the red zone. They just can't take anything in. So,
Agreed. Agreed. Yep. Yep. It really is truly um, just a time to be there, and and not walk away when things get tough, kind of thing. So, but if that's what, needs to happen, sometimes that's what you got to do.
okay, my kid knows all the self-regulation tips and tools in theory, but can rarely put them into practice. Is there a way to train for this so it becomes more instinctual?
My first question would be, how old is this child? Because I will go back repeatedly to, is their brain even ready for, I mean, it's one thing, I mean, kids know complex chemical equations at the age of 5 or 6. So they might be able to rattle down all of the self-regulation strategies, but that doesn't mean necessarily that they have the capability cognitively, their neurology has not gotten to that point where they can put them into action. So it's up to us to scaffold them. And I have a video on scaffolding where you acknowledge that they're working towards being able to do this on their own. But for now, they're going to need your support in X, Y, and Z ways. And then you slowly take off pieces of that support until they do it on their own. This it might not be until they're, 14, 15 that they even begin to find that executive function that they need um, to put self-regulation into action. It's a whole process. They just might not be there yet, and that's okay. Continue to scaffold until you can take the pieces away.
Love that. And someone said, oh yes, Callie, are you able to link to that scaffolding? If not, I'll do it in a minute. But someone saying practicing the tool when they're in a good mood while the upset is not when they're upset. Use it as many times when it's not needed.
Mhm. Yeah, and you don't want to just use humor when things are bad. Like humor's good, but you don't want to just like all of a sudden throw a joke in when they're like, you're not funny, right? You've got to try and practice those skills, do those things, so that it is a comfortable thing, not just like, oh, that's kind of cringy. Why are you doing that? So I agree. Practice the skills when things are going well, and ask your kid what they need when things are going well. You know, when things, have that conversation. Things are, great right now, but when things aren't going well, what do you need from me? Sometimes I wonder what would be best in this situation. And my guess is they'll have opinions. They will help you figure out what they need when things are not in the middle of the red.
And Callie's putting some nice ideas that basically are co-problem solving with the child so that,
She has a wonderful article too. Please, I hope we can. I know it's linked in the 4-part self-regulation guide that we have, but Callie also wrote a wonderful article on co-regulation. So hopefully that gets linked too.
okay, another question. We see many of the gifted child traits like perfectionism, afraid to make mistakes, jealousy, giving up, but when it comes out in meltdown only when they are hungry. So is it really hunger or is it those feelings? It's hard to decipher.
Yeah, I would say kind of acknowledge and address both. So, for my kids in the classroom, I had fidgets, that didn't make noise, because some kids just needed that. Other kids, um, no matter what fidget they had, that perfectionism is going to be a challenge. We have a whole nother talk coming up on that one. So I highly recommend. It is a it is a topic in of itself that our kids deal with and experience. And we can imagine this. Could you imagine sitting through a meeting for 5 hours and you know all of the answers to what the person is saying to you? Can you imagine how dysregulating that would be for a child who just knows everything that's going on right now, but I'm still supposed to sit here and not say anything, like dysregulation, right, left, and center. So yes, that's going to happen with our amazingly gifted kiddos.
Thank you. Okay, well, we've reached 1 o'clock. I'm sure there's many more things people are curious about. You can find us at real2e.org. Teresa has 2 more spots left in her motivation group that starts next week. So if you'd like to get more in depth about your child, you can feel free to join that. We got lots of comments in the chat about how appreciative everybody was for this talk. And we hope to see you at future Real events. And the feedback link is in the chat if you'd like to share your feedback with us. And thank you so much, Teresa.
Thanks, everybody.
And we can stop the recording if you'd like, Callie.